Welcome to the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. I'm Larry Wagner, and I've spent 30 years working with seniors where I was a certified senior advisor and the last 15 years in the home buying industry as a certified senior transition specialist, where I specialize in dealing with seniors going through a transition in their lives. This podcast is for seniors, those with seniors they love, and people who work in the senior community. In each episode, we bring on a guest who works to improve the lives of seniors. This podcast is your key to unlocking senior resources. Today, I'm sitting here with Michele Targovnik from Daniel Gale Sotheby's in Woodbury. Welcome, Michele.
Thank you.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. And you?
I'm very well, thanks. So you're a realtor working in your offices in Woodbury. How did you get to be? That's the first question. How did you get to be a realtor? What brought you to here?
So I took an early retirement from the corporate world, and I was thinking about what really was my passion and things that I wanted to do for many years. And selling real estate was really something that I really wanted to do and had a passion for. So I took the chance, went into real estate, and I'm loving every day.
But you say you had a passion for it. Before you went into real estate, what did that passion look like?
It just looked like looking online at homes, working with some of my relatives to try to find them a home online. But again, not as a real estate agent, just more as like a consultant.
Right. I was one of those people that would go to open houses because I enjoy going to open houses. I'd see an interesting looking house and I'd want to go. And I went to apply for a job as a real estate agent in 1991. When I sold my first business, I was studying to be an insurance agent. And I said, I literally was driving down the road and I made a quick turn into a real estate agent's office and said, hiring. And we talked about it and I said, not for me. And I continued my insurance route and became a financial advisor. But I've always had that interest in real estate, and now I buy and sell houses. So I'm in the real estate business, but for me, not for other people. So I think it's a wonderful business as well. You get to meet people every day, throughout the day, and when you're finished, you've made a new friend.
That's the best part, building relationships. It's personal. It's not something you could fake. You have to be authentic. You have to really work with people and understand what their current needs are, what their future needs are, what their dreams are, right? So that you could work with them or their family. I work with a lot of families, actually. I work with people who are looking to move to assisted living or to some other types of downsizing, relocating, and it typically has a family member involved as well. So I get to build relationships not only with my clients, but their families, and it really makes a difference for me.
But the reason I wanted you on the podcast is because you do spend a lot of time with seniors. Like you said, you transitioning people from their home to a nursing home or independent or assisted living. And it takes a different kind of touch to do that because they go through, definitely, it's traumatic to not only leave your home, and they're usually there for decades, but to then go into a place where you don't feel as independent as you were before. Independent living is not the same as living independently in your home. It's the next step. It's not a nursing home, but it's not the same. And I think people start to lose their sense of self. And somebody like you understands you have to approach them with sensitivity.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of personal experience, whether it's working with I'm a volunteer for the Alzheimer's Association. I'm a committee member for the walk. So I have a history of but knowledge of, some of those things. I take advantage of learning as much as I can going to senior events. I also, unfortunately, had a mother-in-law that passed away from Alzheimer's. So I've been through that, and we've sold her house. So I've been through those experiences, which I think I could build on to help other people to find the right trusted resources, not just resources. When you come to me, you're going to have someone that I trust. And I think that's important, and it adds value to what people are looking for.
The name of this podcast is Unlocking Senior Resources.
Oh, really?
Because we're talking to people like you are a resource, and resources bring more resources. And that's what this is all about. I'm trying to build a oversized community of people who work with seniors, understand seniors, either work exclusively or spend significant amount of their business working with senior citizens. There's no realtor I know of that work exclusively with senior citizens, but some have more of the gentle touch and the understanding that it takes to work with a senior or working with a family of seniors, which gets even more complicated. You have multiple personalities. You have a husband and
Absolutely.
wife is one thing, but you have a daughter and a mother. That's much more complicated.
You're absolutely right. And it really starts like just like my father was a gerontologist, so he was a director of a senior center. So I feel like it's in my blood. It's something that I've always paid special attention to, whether it was getting cookies when I was young, or just the care that he had given throughout his years. I'd like to say it rubbed off on me as well.
That's very good. You're in the right place.
Yeah.
The right place now. You mentioned gerontologist. My father and I were partners in the financial business, and we used to do seminars at independent living facilities, and we had special products that we created just for seniors, and which sort of led me down the path to doing what I do now. And we decided to call ourselves financial gerontologists. We made it up. Well, turn out that's an actual designation.
Oh,
we had to stop saying that. We could have gotten ourselves in trouble, but I didn't know there was such a title.
So talking about designations, I'm actually a senior real estate specialist, which is a designation, which means that I've been educated further to help out seniors. And seniors sometimes, maybe that might be, to mislead, but I'm a senior.
Right.
So, anybody that's 50 and older or 55 and better, I would say.
And better.
And better, really, could qualify as a senior, I guess.
I got a whole bunch. I became a senior transition specialist just because I was spending so much time working with seniors, buying their homes, and they were moving into facilities typically, or moving down south, or moving in with family, that I want to get a better understanding of the people with whom I'm working, whose homes I'm buying. It helps me understand where they're coming from that much more. So I get to serve them a little bit better with a little bit better hand.
Yeah, and it's important. It's also, that's actually how I met you.
It is.
Because I want to stay educated. So I go to a lot of events where there are panels and panelists that are experts in their field. So whether it's a nugget of information that I learn or a connection that I make, I always find that valuable.
So what Michelle just said is that I'm an expert in my field. I want everyone to know that. So yes, it's important. That's we join groups too. We join a whole bunch. We're in the real estate buying business. We join part of real estate groups, we're part of senior groups as well, because that's the client we serve. So not exclusively, but quite a bit. So question. So you talk about becoming personal with your clients and so on. Well, I'm going to ask you the first question, and then I'm going to go back to where I was going. I don't know if this question's even answerable. But, well, first of all, are you more on the buy side or the sell side? Or both. I find realtors tend to be on one or the other.
Both.
You are on both.
Yes.
So you're a good listing agent.
Yes.
Also, you're good at finding houses for your clients.
Yes.
When you're looking for a house for a client, a home, I don't want to say a home sounds so much nicer than a house. What's an average time, if that's an answerable question? That's where I was going before. Does it take weeks, months? I mean, is there an answer to that question, or is it so varied?
So I'm not sure if I understand the question, so let me just preface it this way. Once you find a house, once you have an accepted offer, it could take 90 days.
Oh, that's another story. Yeah, that's the bank.
But to find a house,
that's my question.
Inventory is very low right now. Yep. So there's a lot of multiple offers. It could take a few months to actually find the home that you're looking for, depending on the market and the competitive nature of where you're looking.
Right.
And, there are always a lot of other considerations or concessions that have to be considered when you're making that offer. So it could take a little bit now, especially because the inventory is low.
Right. And you're in Woodbury office, Syosset Woodbury School District. You're right in the heart of it. Matter of fact, you're down the block from the high school. That's where I went, and for Syosset, born and bred. And I assume a district like Syosset, or an area like Syosset Woodbury is a very desirable area. The school's excellent. And I assume that makes it even that much harder to find a home when you have such a good school district.
Long Island is very desirable.
Okay.
All areas of Long Island are very desirable. I sell and I work with buyers in Nassau and in Suffolk County, and I have to tell you, it's Syosset schools, yes.
Yeah.
You could look on the public records. It's amazing. But there are a lot of good schools on Long Island.
Yeah. That is true.
Yeah.
That's very true. It's funny, my kids went to South Huntington schools and they were mediocre. And now they got ranked all the way up there. And I don't know what happened. The demographic is still the same and the teachers are still the same, but I don't know. Either everyone got worse or we got better. I don't know what it is. Rankings could work both ways.
That's why I say look at the public knowledge that's out there.
Correct. So, so you do work a lot. Is there a range of area you work with? Like, when I buy houses, I buy Nassau, Suffolk, Brooklyn, and Queens, even Westchester, and so on. Most realtors have some sort of.
Yeah, I would say I am more East Nassau and Western Suffolk.
Okay.
Kind of the center of the island is a sweet spot, but of course, I'll work in Westbury, Smithtown.
Sure.
Kind of a.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, question. So, I like the podcast to be educational. That our guest brings something for our listeners to take home with them, if you will. And if someone's looking to buy a home, either it's a millennial looking to buy a home or a person winding down looking for a different home. Is there a process, or is there some advice you would give someone who's going through this process right now or about to go through it
to buy a home?
To buy a home.
Yes, I think that you have to have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think the first thing is plan out what is your budget, work with a mortgage broker or a lender to understand what you could afford and what your budget is. I would start
you're looking
there.
At houses, you're getting the finances in order.
Yeah, get an idea of
why look at a $800,000 house when you could afford $400,000?
Exactly. Or, work with someone that kind of explains to you the range. If you put X down, this is what your monthly payment's going to be. If you put Y down, this is what do you feel comfortable with, in terms of what you're looking for. So I'd say first try to figure out how much money or what your budget is. And then again, do
you have mortgage brokers that you work with that you could always recommend to someone coming to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mortgage brokers and lenders. And depending on where you feel I would recommend a few.
Right.
And then, based on the relationship that you have or the rapport that you have, I want to make sure I give you trusted people, but you make the decision.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
So I would say you start with what your budget is, what your location and where you want to go, and a realistic view of what you could get within that budget is really a good place to start, just so that emotionally you're ready.
How many people are realistic?
I think people understand the market a lot better than they did when I bought a house.
Oh, yeah.
I think, people are looking at the mortgage rates. I think right now people understand that mortgage rates aren't going to be dramatically different in the next year or so. When we went through the COVID situation, I think there was a lot of unrealistic expectations that when it went to the 7% or numbers that people thought it might go down back to 2 or 3%. But I think people now are more realistic about that in terms of what the rates look like.
But closer to the norm today than we were then.
Exactly.
People think it's so crazy now. This is not so. 5 to 6% is probably normal. You're 6 3/4, 7%. You're a point off. You're at 2.5%. You're 2.5 points off. And or half of what you should be.
And you could always refinance. I think that people have come to that conclusion themselves, but when I'm talking to people, I'm like, that is always an option as you're making some of those choices.
For sure. So they've gotten their finances, the financial expectations in order. They've decided what area they're looking at, and they sort of set their expectations. What's the next step for them?
Looking, getting familiar with the neighborhoods, working with a realtor that has their needs, their fiduciary needs, as well as their personal needs, in order when they start looking at houses. What's the must-haves? In other words, if they must have a primary bedroom, and with an ensuite, then we start there. What are the nice to haves, right? So we kind of have to look. Some people must have a pool. Some people definitely don't want a pool, right? So you kind of have to have that idea and put some boundaries around it. So you're looking at really what you want.
Well, that makes sense. You're right. If you put it's a great idea. Must haves and want haves, because people get inundated with internet information, Zillow, and there's I don't know how many houses are for sale on Long Island on Zillow that we go look at. We don't go to MLS as consumers. We go to Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, things like that. And funny, when I'm pricing houses to see what kind of offer we'll make, I always go to Zillow. And my wife says, "Why aren't you going to MLS?" I said, "Because the homeowner's going to Zillow. I want to go to the same place my homeowner's going to because their expectations are based on what they see on Zillow," which is something people have to be aware of. Those numbers are not necessarily
accurate. I think that's what you have to understand also, whether you're a buyer or a listing. You have to understand that those numbers incorporate a lot of things that you may not think of. So if there is new construction in the area, that might be flipping the list price higher than you want, or days on market. So if there's a house that's undergoing construction, it could be 200 days on market, but that's not norm for that area.
Correct, because they've been building it for 189 of those days. Now the last 11 days it's done, kind of thing.
Exactly. So there's a lot of things to consider when you're looking at a home too. The condition of the house, the area. But condition's important. So Zillow's looking at what it looks like from the outside of the house, not from the inside of the house.
Actually, I always wondered about that. Are they looking at it at all, or is it just an average 3-bedroom, 2-bath?
It's basically an average. So that's why I say it's not looking at the inside of the house. So the inside of the house could have not one update, and every other house on the street could be very updated. So that could make it look like that house is overvalued or undervalued, depending on how you look at it.
We just got a call 2 days ago, and the person said he wants us to buy his house. He doesn't want to sell through a realtor because he just wants a simple sale. Doesn't want people going through the house. It's in terrible conditions, holes in the roof, and it's a mess. And it's his father's passed away. He's kind of embarrassed about it that his father lived like this. So he just wants us to walk in, make an offer, and be done. But Zillow says it's worth $800,000. Zillow has no bedroom, bathroom, or square footage count on it. It's a 2-bedroom house. It's in an ordinary neighborhood. 2-bedroom house in an ordinary neighborhood are not worth $800,000. How could Zillow? I'm not asking you an answer for this. This is a rhetorical statement. I'm like, how could Zillow give any Zestimate or valuation of a house? Don't know the bedroom, bathroom, or square footage of a house. And here on Long Island, square footage is not a big thing. Take any place in the country, it seems like. But so his expectations are coming off this $800,000 number. We think it's worth renovated about $600,000, and we can only offer about $400,000 or $350,000. We have to put about $150,000 into it. So he's coming off this ridiculous number because I'm going to list it with an agent and a realtor. He thinks the realtor's going to get him $800,000. So you have to.
They need an expert. I mean, we talked about that a little bit earlier in terms of experts. You do need an expert. A market analysis is really important to understand what the true value is, not as estimate. They're not taking into account a lot of individuality approach to a home. So I think it's very important to get an expert to understand the market, to understand a market analysis. I've had many clients that have come to me or listening, looking at Zillow, and I'm going to ask you a question. What do you think the most important thing is when you're selling a house?
You asking me the question?
I'm asking you the question. I'm asking you a question.
It's my podcast. I didn't prepare to answer questions. What's the most important thing when you're selling a house?
Yeah, when you're listing a house.
The most important thing. People say curb appeal is what I've heard a lot. But I know the things that make buyers want to buy a house, they say is the kitchen and the master bedroom.
So those are things that the buyers are looking for. But from a listing standpoint, it's a pricing strategy.
Oh, that's it.
Right?
I'm thinking the house itself.
Yeah. Right. So what happens is people don't, they say, maybe I could sell the house by myself, right? Or they have a number in mind.
Right.
But there's a pricing strategy. There's a way to make sure that you get the most. What can the market bear? What is the market willing to pay for that house? You're going to figure that out if you have the right pricing strategy.
Yeah.
So that's really that's where I add value, as well as from a negotiating standpoint. I could work with buyers and sellers, whether they're represented or not represented. Let's say if I'm a listing agent or from a buyer representation, I know how to get someone a house. Can't always be successful because sometimes people are bidding way over what a budget might be. But I think that that's important, that you have to have an expert on your side to make sure that you're getting, the best for your value.
It's so funny. People say I'm going to list it myself. FSB, for sale by owners. I'm in the business 16 years, buying and investing in single-family houses, fixing them and selling them, being a house flipper. And we list all of our houses through realtors. We don't list our own houses. Lord knows, I know enough about how to value a house. I've been doing it for 16 years at all price points, from $300,000 to $2 million. But a realtor brings something to the table, even to me, who sold 500 houses maybe. Who owned 500 houses that have been sold. I sold none of them. People like you sold them all. So people think they can work without a realtor. It's much more complicated than they think. And another comment I'll make, besides the technical part that you need to know the process, you need to know how to price it. You're willing to go through the open houses and keep the house clean. It's talking to potential buyers when it's your home they're looking at and critiquing. It's very difficult to do. And we just bought a home, and it's a very large home. It's a 10,000-foot house. And we called some designers in to give us some pointers on what they think we should do. We don't only buy 10,000-foot houses. And they're almost like apologizing for denigrating the way the house looks now, and for the style and the fixtures. And so I said, I don't take it personally. First of all, I didn't do them. But second of all, I'm not the kind of guy that takes it personally anyway. This is business. But homeowners do. So when I walk into someone's home, I never tell them, oh, God, how could you have this color wallpaper or this carpet? But people will say that to a homeowner.
It's hard. And, I'm here as a realtor. I'm also involved with the Alzheimer's Association. I volunteer. I'm on the committee for the walk at Eisenhower Park. My mother-in-law just passed, unfortunately, of Alzheimer's. Now, this was a house that I was putting on the market, a family home. Yes. And just even when I was looking at the house, I was tainted.
Right.
I was like, oh, it doesn't look so bad. I've been looking at it for 30 years.
Right.
So I was talking myself out of things that if I walked into someone else's house, how would I feel? In the end, we cleaned it up and it sold for a great price. Right. But it was a little bit more emotional from that standpoint, looking at it even as a realtor, but knowing that it was my husband, where my husband grew up. Right. It had a different feel. So I could definitely, I don't know if the word would be empathize, but I could definitely relate to that situation. And it is someone's home, and you need to make sure that you're comfortable with explaining small things. What's your range of things that you want to do to get the house on the market? Yeah. Do you want to do nothing? Okay, so doing nothing, this is what your house is worth. Do you want to paint? Do you want to do a couple of things that will brighten up the house, make it a little bit more marketable? Or do you want to put in a new kitchen? And again, that could be based on where you're located or the amount of energy you want to put into something.
Hi, I'm Larry.
And I'm Ben. We're the father and son team of Leave the Key Home Buyers, and we want to buy your house.
We specialize in working with seniors who are transitioning out of their homes, and we understand what you were going through.
So if you're considering selling your home and would like an alternative to the traditional overwhelming process, reach out and see how we can help.
Do you have an outdated home?
No need to update anything.
Have a home that needs repairs?
Don't bother with repairs.
Don't want to take everything with you?
Leave whatever you want behind.
Dreading the headaches that come with agents?
Sell your home without paying a commission.
Dreading prying neighbors, attending open houses and passing judgment on your home?
No need for public showings.
When you sell to us, You'll have all the certainty of closing on your timeline, not someone else's, and there's absolutely no pressure.
Visit leavethekey.com or call us today for a no-obligation offer at 631-388-7771 if you want to sell your home today.
Fascinating lead-in to something I wanted to go to later, so we'll go to it now. Everything I look at says there's no home improvement that gets you 100% return on the dollar. Say the number one home improvement in 2024 was putting in a stone facade, which I'm sorry, I just don't believe it. But it's always a garage door. They said it's the number one in the front door, I think is typically.
I recently saw that as well again, yeah.
Okay, and so, but stone facade is too personal and too expensive that I would never recommend anyone do that. The front door is a touch point, especially the front door handle. You want the potential buyer to get that sense the house is clean, at least paint the front door. But beyond that, it seems to drop off pretty radically as to return on investment. So I advise people who come to me to buy their homes, they don't want to bother doing anything. It's a good thing because you're not going to get your money back. If you're going to spend $50,000 renovating it, you're going to get back typically three-quarters, so $37,000 out of the 50. So why do it? But if you do it, it may make an unsaleable house saleable. Is that a fair way of putting it? That they're not going to get their money back, but
I say that you want the house. Some people, especially because the inventory is low,
right.
People say, "Oh, it's going to sell anyway."
Right.
But you want to bring people into your home. So there are pictures, like you said. You look at Zillow.
Right.
There are pictures. It's very important to take great pictures of a home, and some pictures are more inviting.
Yes.
So if you have, maybe a dark burgundy wall, someone might think it's a very dark looking house.
Right.
But if you have a light gray wall, all of a sudden the house gets brighter.
Yeah.
So I think that there are some things that make a difference. You want to bring people into your home, though.
Right.
When you're looking at Zillow and stuff, sometimes people just, swipe left.
Absolutely.
Not as interested. I don't know. I've been married 35 years, but that's what I've heard.
Yes. It's that quick 1 second instinct. Ugly.
Yeah, or even a bathroom. Sometimes people might want to fix up a bathroom a little bit. If you have 1.5 bathrooms and you do want to put a little money into the house, maybe you want to make it 2 full bathrooms,
right.
Especially in the marketplace that we are in today. Again, it's bringing more people into the house.
Right. That's interesting, bringing more people in the house.
I always say the wider the net, the better for the listing or the selling the owner.
Absolutely.
The more people you could get into your house, the better it is for your
100%. 100%. Back to that 2-bedroom house. There's not a lot of buyers for a 2-bedroom house.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're trying to explain to them. Zillow doesn't know it's only 2 bedrooms. They think you have a normal number of buyers. There's very few buyers for a 2-bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
So that's back to what you said. You can't cast a wide net on a 2-bedroom.
Correct.
So you try to cast the widest. We'd have one now in Howard Beach, actually, we're trying to sell. We're trying to cast the widest net we can for a 2-bedroom bungalow. But the market for a 2-bedroom bungalow is like this. For 3-bedroom high ranch, it's like this. Interesting question. Do you find one house is more desirable than another as far as style goes? Colonials, high ranches, splits?
I think it depends in the area and what you're looking for. So, I have a client right now that's looking for a colonial. That's all they want.
Right.
But on Long Island, there are areas that are really specific to, let's say, splits or a Levitt type of home.
Right.
So it really depends on the area. There are a lot of people that are building up now.
Yeah.
So they're, I don't know if I'd call them colonials, but they really are.
Right.
They're making them, like
right.
2-story homes with a pretty nice too. Yeah.
Or a cape. They're making the full-blown colonials. Yeah, they're retrofit colonials.
Expanded ranches.
Right. But once you put the 3 or 4 bedrooms upstairs, as far as I'm concerned, it's colonial.
Yeah, and it does depend. I do find a lot of multi-generational homes right now where that wasn't, a few years ago, I didn't see as much of that, but now there are, which is, you would need a bigger home for some of those multi-generational families.
My own situation, our house was built at 1,800 feet. It's now 3,500 feet because it's an apartment where my wife and I literally, as we speak, moving into. Over the last few weeks we were, and my daughter's moving to our house with her husband and 2 kids. But what's interesting was it was my in-laws who lived in that apartment before. We just expanded it. And my wife and I with our kids living in the house. So it'll be the fourth generation living in that house, my grandchildren, which is very cool.
That is very cool. I haven't heard much of that until you were telling
Yeah.
me those stories.
Yes. And so it's like in the city. My mother grew up in Brighton Beach, and the whole family was there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that way anymore. Everyone moved to the suburbs and spread out. And now, forget the suburbs, they moved to different states. And it is, so I'm very fortunate
You are.
to be able to have a family that wants to do this, let alone, is willing to do it, I should say, let alone wants to do it. So
It says a lot about you, though, too. So, even from a podcast, it says a lot about who you are as a person. Your kids still want to live with you.
Correct. Independently, but with us. What's interesting is there was never a door between the apartment and the house. And I went to the town, and because we had to rejigger the apartment for us, we made it bigger and so on. I said, I'd like to put a door in between the house and the apartment. And I said, you have to have a door for an accessory apartment. So what do you have to have a door? You're required to have one. I said, you've been inspecting my accessory apartment every year for the last 33 years. There is no door. 33 years ago, I begged to have a door, be allowed to put a door in, and you told me no. Because I have no idea why. So for 33 years, we had to go outside to go to see my in-laws and back and forth. Now we just go to the laundry room. So much easier. Mm-hmm. And they said they have no idea why anyone told us no. They said it's been a requirement forever. So sometimes when you're doing construction, make sure you know the question you're asking. Sometimes ask it a few times of a few different people. But back to the house. But you're saying, I remember when I first started in the business, I was told Colonials are the most expensive house foot for foot. I don't like Colonials personally, but it's what you like, as you said before. To me, I'm a ranch guy because no stairs. But Colonials,
a very big market now, actually, for first floor bedrooms.
Yes, the first floor masters.
So when you're talking about Colonials or ranches, right, whatever it is, first floor bedrooms, big market for that.
I'm convinced it's because Long Island is aging and aging rapidly because young people aren't staying, and us senior citizens, the ones getting better, are still here. So we're an aging population. So, we need that first floor bedroom. So we're converting sometimes another room to a bedroom. The house we're looking at now, though, this gigantic house, we're debating what to do with the first floor. The master's on the second floor, but what do we do on the first floor if something happens to the owner and they need first floor living? Or if you have a family member that somebody has a hip surgery, now what are they doing for the recovery period or knee surgery? They can't go upstairs.
We're not all old.
We're not all, but we're not all. We're better. We're better.
We're better. We're 55 and better.
We're 55 and better. So I remember when I turned 50 in the AARP, sent mail to my mother's house. I hadn't lived in that house for 24 years. And she, with a gleeful glint in her eye, brought it over to say I made it to AARP. So, but anyway, so back to the very beginning, we were talking about is you have your budget together, you have your finance person in order, meaning your mortgage broker.
You're pre-approved.
You're pre-approved, which is critical. I don't accept offers from people on my house unless they're pre-approved, which is somewhat meaningless, but it's better than not being pre-approved. It still takes the same amount of time to get the official approval.
Not pre-qualified, pre-approved.
And
but actually, just to add to that, so part of my responsibility as well to my buyer or my listing,
right,
if I'm listing agent, is to do that due diligence. So to understand what's in the bank accounts,
right,
not the bank account numbers,
right,
but to do the due diligence to make sure that if you're pre-approved, let's say for $800,000, that you have the money in the back, background to work with the mortgage broker or to make sure that you are pre-approved, or if you're a cash buyer, to make sure that the cash is there. So, it's important. There's a lot of paperwork. You were talking about that before in terms of process, understanding, the disclosures, the New York State disclosures. There's a lot of disclosures that the New York State asked to make sure that are signed, and rightfully so, fair housing disclosures.
Right.
Protected classes,
right,
as well as really understanding what a seller and a buyer agent is or broker. Those are really important things to go into the buying of a house or the selling of a house, to make sure that you have a real estate agent that understands paperwork, that makes it easy and stress-free, or as stress-free as possible, so that you don't have to worry about any of that lead paint disclosures, things that make sense that you just not being in the business, one may not know is out there.
Right, that new disclosure for property condition disclosure form.
Mhm.
It's like, was it 5 pages long or something? That's a big deal. People don't know how to fill those out. I mean, the first time I got one, I was angry.
Yeah,
It's
the new one,
so
you should. I always recommend you work with your real estate attorney on that.
right.
But yes, it's important to understand, all of that information that is
Right.
required.
It's complicated. People don't know how complicated it is to buy and sell a house in New York. I was giving a presentation down in Salt Lake City, I think now. So Salt Lake City, to a bunch of real estate investors. And afterwards, one of the investors came up to me and he said, "Larry, I'm never going to compete with you." He's actually a Salt Lake City investor, ironically enough. And I'm saying like a proud farmer. And I gave a great presentation. He says, "There's no way I'll do business in New York." When I told him how long it takes to get permits, the sales process, all the transaction costs in selling a house, which
That's
we will address.
really important to understand. So, I was fortunate enough to sell a home
Right.
in Syosset to a couple that had actually previously bought 3 years prior had bought a home in Florida. We sold their house, and I really built a great personal relationship with them as well as the realtor that they used in Florida. And I just went out to meet them. I was in Florida and I got to see their home. It was a beautiful experience. But working with their realtor from Florida, I was telling them about New York, and we kind of have been exchanging information in terms of the differences,
She's so
because
bold.
in Florida, things happen a lot quickly. I have a friend that's a realtor in Maryland. They don't have to work with lawyers.
Right.
In New York, a typical transaction really can take 90 days. So it really, again, understanding where you're moving from or where you're moving to, really can change the timeline in terms of when you want to either sell your home or buy a home.
Oh, absolutely. People so often sit there and they'll call us and they'll say, "Okay, we're ready to sell our house. We want to get you a price from you." So we'll give them a price. They'll say, "Okay, I want to wait until X, Y, or Z." And we say, "Just be careful because buying a house takes time. Just getting title takes time." So some of the towns now increased. Was it Babylon? I think said it's going to be 60 days to get title. 60 days. Do you go to other municipalities in other states? It's a day. You walk in, you get it. It's 3 days by mail, by email. They want 60 days. My comment is government employees have no competition. And if this is a private business, they'd be out in 24 hours. But with the government, they can do whatever they want to do. And there's nothing we can do about it. So just be prepared for the time it takes to sell your home. And be prepared if your lease is expiring on your apartment, you're a millennial, you're renting, you're with your young spouse, and now you want to get a house. "Oh, my lease expires in 2 months. Let's start looking next month." No. You're already behind the 8 ball, 2 months away. So you got to start looking months in advance. I said it take 1, 2, 3 months to find a house, if you're lucky, and then you have to spend the 2 or 3 months buying the house. So that's a huge important factor. People don't get it because they're right not to get it. It shouldn't take this long. So when you only know it does only if you've done it, and you've done it once or twice. Well, so you're right. So you've done it, right. I've done it 500 times, and every time I'm dumbfounded. And it's mansion tax, and this, with the near. I didn't know mansion tax for houses over $1 million. There's another tax.
Peconic.
What's that?
Out east, there's extra taxes.
Oh, the peconic preservation or whatever it's called. Yeah. We just get killed here. People will sometimes buy a house in my business. They'll buy a house and they'll sell it very quickly right afterwards, and they sort of double close. You'd never double close in New York because it can cost you $15,000, $20,000. It costs them hundreds of dollars.
But the one good thing is, well, maybe not one good thing, is like Long Island is a beautiful place to live. And yes, the costs are going up, but the quality of life that you have on Long Island, whether it's being close to New York,
Right.
New York City, or out to the beaches in Montauk, it's really just a fantastic place to live.
Having
And
seasons.
having seasons, watching your family, grow, and really all of the, from an entertainment standpoint to a cultural standpoint, it's just a great place to live.
And we have some of the best schools. I mean, if I look at schools in other states, they don't compare to Long Island schools, even our mediocre schools are better than most schools across the country, the best schools across the country. And we have an incredible state university system.
Incredible.
It's second to California, I think, and that's it. So out of 50 states, I think we're number 2.
Yeah, and you don't have to, when you think about the money you invest in your family or your children, some people send their kids to private school.
Right.
When you come here, you don't have to send your kids
Correct.
to private school.
Right.
Taxes are high. I'm not saying they're not. But, hopefully you get to use the public school system on Long Island because it's an excellent
Correct.
school system and you don't have to pay for those private schools.
Correct. And then you don't have to pay for private college because you can get a really good education between the universities throughout the system and so on. So I think I've been living here 66 years and I don't plan on going anywhere. I just double down. I'm doing the work in my house, building the studio. So no, I plan on being here for the duration. And I agree with you. If I had to pick one negative thing on Long Island, besides the cost of living, is traffic, just congestion. But at this point, since COVID, I don't commute to Manhattan, which I used to do. And at that point, it is what it is. It's not so terrible. And quite frankly, it's getting crowded elsewhere as well. Desirable areas tend to have congestion. It's the non-desirable areas that don't. So if you want to give up congestion, go to an area that nobody wants to live, and you'll be fine. So go to an area with lousy schools, with poor economies, and no jobs, and everything. You won't have to wait at a traffic light. So, but yes, I agree with you. But question, another road I want to go down. They changed the rules in 2024 with the buyer's agent and the seller's agent and how the commission works. It used to be the seller paid the commission to agents on both, if there were agents on both sides, one representing the seller, one representing the buyer. That has kind of changed. Can you just elaborate on that? I think they just made life more confusing. I don't know if you...
I'll go with your latter.
Okay. Shocking. The government... Well, is it the government? Yes. It's not really the government. It's LIBOR. Who's it does?
Yeah. I don't know what government agency changed this, but because of lawsuits. But really, I mean, in our office alone, I don't think there's been much of a change at all. Right. The sellers usually pay the commission to the buyer's broker now, and it was in the past. One of the differences is, there's a few differences. One is that the state does require you to get if you're working with a buyer, to become a buyer's agent. So that's confusing to people because it's a contract and people get nervous when they have to sign a contract. And if I was a buyer, I would understand that. But the truth is that nobody works for free, right? So what I try to tell my buyers is that I am going to find out if the seller is offering compensation to buyer or broker compensation first. We could, if in most cases they are. So let's say they are paying compensation. That's fine. We write up the purchase order. We write up the order, and we include that in the offer. Right. So we make sure that the seller is going to pay the commission to the buyer broker. If that's not the case, let's say I sign with a buyer's agent as a buyer's agent, and if there's a difference, so let's say the seller's only paying 1.5, but I have an agreement with 2, then they might have to pay 0.5%. But my goal is to put that into the offer so that they understand. Because in my mind, and I think in many people's mind, it's just hard to get there, is from the seller's standpoint, they want the net best offer. The net, right? So they want the net. So if we come in with an offer that makes sense to them, then that they should be willing to take that and work that through the system. So basically, really nothing has changed. There are more contracts that have to be signed. And I always say to a customer at that point, or a client, let's go out. Let's put a few houses on this buyer agreement. We're going to go see 3 houses. We're going to put 3 houses on that, and we'll do it on just these 3 houses. And make sure that you feel comfortable working with me. It's like a marriage, right? You have to make sure that everybody's comfortable with each other. You're comfortable, and then once you're comfortable, let's make it you're looking in the Syosset Woodbury area or Nassau County or Nassau and Suffolk, so that you feel comfortable, so that we're working together to find your dream home.
Right, but that makes sense. That's perfect. So I love where this just ended. I was going to go some other places, but I like where we just left it. I think it's perfect. I know I asked if you have a single takeaway. First, is there anything else you'd like to cover that I didn't ask you about? Anything like that? Okay. And if there's one takeaway from this podcast, if someone's listening that you want them to think one thing they learned from this, what would that be?
That it's personal.
And that's a great way of putting it.
You know, that's selling a house, buying a house. It's a personal experience. It could vary if you're working with your own family, if you're independent and you want to do everything for yourself, but it's personal. And I think that the best way that you could sell or buy a house is to make sure you have a good relationship with a realtor, that you have a good relationship with the resources that's available to you, and that you trust someone. You trust, I think, is the number one thing that is important when you're working with any kind of service provider. As a realtor, I'm a service provider.
Correct.
And I want to represent what the seller or buyer wants to do, but I also want to make it a pleasant experience. So I think we talked about stress before, trying to take the stress out is important for everybody.
Right.
Lay the stress on me. If you need to find someone, let me help you find someone, whether it's a painter or whatever kind of service you're looking for. And have that personal experience. Make sure that you like the person you're working with. You're going to be with them for a while, at least 90 days even after the close. Yeah, I think that to understand that it's a personal experience.
And that's 100% true. And I'm going to make a comment. Normally, you have to ask the question. I don't say much after that, but I want to make a comment to anyone watching this, and that is, we've sold 500, 600 houses, whatever we sold in the last 16 years, houses that we bought and fixed up. We use a realtor for a reason. Realtors are important. Some people say, they get paid too much money for what they do. They take you through a process that's complicated. They negotiate to get a better price. They earn their money. You don't look at a realtor as what you charge per hour, if you will. If you look at back your commissions, time it takes to sell a house, sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's not. And depending on the market, depending on the inventory you're working with, the house you're actually working with, and you're taking a gamble that you could work with someone for 6 months, get a listing, and the house doesn't sell because your client is not willing to do what what they're supposed to do. They're not keeping the house clean when you do open houses or do showings, and it's out of your control. And yet you're still putting your time in without knowing if you're going to get anything in return. And so for people to think that doing it on their own is the right way, I'm vehemently against that. Again, with all the houses we've sold, you think I sit there and say, we can do it on our own. I don't think we've ever sold a house retail on our own. So that's my comment. That's sort of my plea to everyone looking to sell their house. And if they're looking to buy a house, realtors have information we just don't have. And as buyers, and a lot of realtors have brought houses to me saying, I know this person's selling this house. It's not on the market for public to see.
Correct.
But you bring it to see, Larry, it's a house right up your alley. So working with a realtor on the buyer side opens up doors to houses literally opens up doors to houses you wouldn't have seen otherwise if you're a Zillow kind of person, which I think is most people are doing, Zillow, Redfin, and so on. Mm-hmm. So with all that said, how does somebody get hold of you?
Well, they could call me at 631-897-8286.
Let's say that again.
631
right.
897
right.
8286.
Very good.
Could call or text. You could even just look me up on the Daniel Gale website, but then it would be Michele Targovnik at danielgale.com is my email address, but it's a little confusing because it's Michele with one L.
Yes. Yes.
But it's Michele with one L. Look up my name. But even if you look at under T for Targovnik on the Daniel Gale agent website, you'll be able to find me and a lot more information about me as well.
Oh, perfect. We'll also put in the show notes, we'll put your contact information.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. It's been great, really.
Thank you again.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. If you've enjoyed this episode or found it helpful, Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast. We specialize in working with seniors who are transitioning out of their homes, and we understand what you are going through. So if you are considering selling your home and would like an alternative to the traditional overwhelming process, reach out to see how we can help. When working with us, you can sell your home in its current condition, there is no need to remove unwanted items, and you control when the house is sold, along with so many other advantages. Visit leavethekey.com or call us at 631-388-7771 to learn more about our senior home buying process.